Welcome to the Dance to Heal podcast. I'm your host, Jenny C. Cohen. Join me as I share stories of how life is a dance. I'm a cancer survivor, mother of two, and an award-winning performer who found that mind and body-connected movement is vital to healing in a way that is safe and tailored to your life. I created Dance to Heal Wellness featuring the Spotlight Confidence Formula and also authored the best-selling award-winning book, Outside In Recovery, Dancing My Way Back to Myself After Breast Cancer. I will bring new ways to help you on your dance journey and healing path. Are you ready to move? Dance to Heal starts now.
As the years pass, because grief is not a linear process at all, I started to realize that my mom's work wasn't done. It just needed to transform. And in a very real way, I feel like that this torch of strength that my mom carried for her whole life, she passed it along to me as she died in my arms. It was a very surreal moment. I've never experienced anything like that. And super respectful of all beliefs, but it was that moment when I realized wow, this is so much deeper than we can even imagine. I'm not sure what just happened, but this was the most transcendent experience of my life. And from that moment, I started to carry the strength that she had, but with all the intentionality that I learned along the way, with all of I'm the kind of person that'll slow down enough to be like, what are we really doing? And why are we doing this? And that's what I hope to pass on to this role. The strength that my mom had, the resiliency of being able to do things, having the grit, right? Because you still need grit. Despite having resources, you still need to be able to get through the stuff that life will throw your way. But pairing it with something so much more intentional, something structured, something sustainable, something that can amplify your grit so you're not relying on grit alone. And as I looked at the circle, I felt like there was this moment of, this is just a continuation. This didn't end. It's just a transformation of her story. And it's now turned into a program that I genuinely hope will help break the cycle of overwhelm for working moms.
What is your mom's name, Corina?
Nancy.
What was her full name?
Nancy Coromoto Melendez was her maiden name, and Hollensteiner was her married name.
Will you say your full name again for us?
Nancy Coromoto Melendez Hollensteiner.
I'm so emotional right now. It was really special for her to come here and be here with us, audience members, as a person who survived the arduous care of breast cancer treatment in the Western world back, 11 years ago. I can totally have even just a tiny idea of her fight because, she fought longer, I think, than that, right, Corina?
She fought for 10 years.
Yeah, that's a long journey, folks, to be undergoing treatment. And I really appreciate you sharing her story and letting us know what the motivating factor was behind all of this work that you do. In this day and age where everyone's trying to make a mark in the world and leave some form of influence, I think it makes a big difference for us to hear why you're doing this, because then it really truly increases the depth factor. Does that make sense? Because someone launching my program, it originally started for breast cancer survivors, and then it morphed into the women that I was before I got cancer, before my body just broke down and said, I can't take this anymore. Why are you not taking the load off? Right? Why are you not doing this? I love you, my body to me. I love you, but I really can't keep you safe anymore. And that's what I hope for women and men too, because men can get breast cancer, any type of cancer. When do you actually pay attention when your body's saying, please stop taking me for granted? We come on this earth and we're actual souls. No one knows what keeps us alive, what made us alive, right? And we have purposes we're supposed to fulfill, and our bodies were gifted to us to hold our souls, to get that mission accomplished. It's a two-way street, folks. It's two ways. Your body listens to you. You need to listen to your body. That's my new like soapbox I will die on, Karina. Like,
How
hello,
significant.
right? Because for me, I danced throughout my treatment, and it was one of the few times I listened to my body. It was this two-way street, and then I realized, oh, we all should be doing that because all the signs were there before I got cancer, Karina. I just didn't listen. And then even after cancer, I still didn't listen until I almost lost one of my kids who was in severe distress. And then once I started to listen, I got all these downloads, right? Like for example, like when my son was diagnosed with type 1, and so I'm going to get spiritual, folks, because I think it's really important that we acknowledge there are levels of consciousness way bigger than what we know as humans. Sorry, just deal with it. It's okay if you unfollow or you're like poo poo, whatever. There's a life lesson. Listen, stay with us here. And when my son, who I had through in vitro, so my babies, my husband had testicular cancer and we had to go through IVF. And we weren't supposed to have kids because during the workup for me to do that, they discovered I had severe endometriosis. I had a cyst on one of my ovaries. I never would have gotten pregnant naturally anyways. So the silver lining to Michael getting cancer was, oh, we had to bypass that long, arduous checklist of all the things you do before you go to in vitro. We were like, oh, we have to do in vitro because we had to store his sperm before his chemotherapy started officially, right? And then it was a running joke at that time. God said, oh, we don't want you to have kids. You're not destined to have children. And we insisted on playing God. So the joke was that I got twins, right? Here, you want babies so hard? Here, have two of them at the same time. Ah, it's like, ah. So then I'm thinking, all right, so you gave me these two miracle babies that, again, I did not delegate. I took over their complete care after a year. We couldn't afford an assistant, like a doula type person. I did everything. I stopped working. I let my licensure has an OT expire. We ended up homeschooling them. They want to do sports. I was driving 2 states over for them to do elite baton twirling because I thought, oh, I'll have two kids. They can go to college for a baton. I don't know what I was thinking. And then they did rhythmic gymnastics, and they were junior Olympians. That level of training, right? Because their coaches didn't think they had a future, and then I was like, no, what do you mean my kids don't have a future? Let's roll up my sleeves. What do you mean? And then, they wanted it, so they worked for it. And remember, I couldn't do any of that stuff. It was them being given the opportunities. We made that happen, right? And then out of the blue, my son has diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and I was so angry I stopped talking to God. Just was like, are you kidding me? How I can't, what, type 1 diabetes, you can't joke about stuff like that. This is like back then before they came up with all these current sensors that will even turn off your insulin. It was a guessing game those years ago. So then I didn't sleep for 4 years. And I was so angry at God, like, how could you do this to him? And then during my cancer treatment, I got a download. So I'm doing chemo, and when you're going through chemo, they kind of kill you to save you. Because the chemo, they can't keep it just to the cancer. It goes throughout your whole body. You get chemo brain, you get chemo rages. It kills off parts of your body that has to slowly come back, right? So in the middle of this really hard time of having poisons injected into me, I got a download from God. You don't need to understand, but because you asked so much, your son got type 1 to slow him down. And all those times that you thought you were staying up to keep him alive, I did that. Your son has things to do. It wasn't, you weren't the only person. Like, I was holding you. I was holding your family. And I was like, oh, sorry. I didn't understand. I understand now. You know what I'm saying? And so it was really interesting to have that perspective back then. However, going through chemo, you have to disassociate. You leave your body during it, and then I didn't come back. And then my other child went into distress, and we it was very acutely scary the first 2-3 years with the self-harm and the suicidal ideation. It was maximum care, right? So for moms out there who are hearing this, right, there comes a time though you do need to delegate, because as I recover and come back into my body from the cancer, right, I don't want to go back there because my body is starting to get strong again. right? So those of us were gifted that privilege of staying around. Like your mom got to stay around for 10 years. But she didn't have your system then, Karina.
She, and you know, she, I'll give you a preview. Well, first off, like what a story, Jenny, because it's incredible to see the resilience that continues to grow, even as y'all have gone through so much. And instead of, I mean, there's the moments, right? It's not a linear path. So there's the moments of doubt of asking God, like, what? How could you? And then the silent treatment, like, we're not doing this. I don't know what else you have rolled up your sleeve. And then the surrender and the release of there's something bigger going on here. Something you will see in the delegation guide, the delegation playbook. Sometimes we get really overwhelmed as to what to delegate because it all feels like, where do I even start? And it all feels equal. Like there's 50 tasks to do. But in reality, those 50 things, they can all be categorized. I actually had this as a download when I was pregnant with my twins. I was sitting on the corner of our couch, 38 weeks pregnant. Very rare to get to 38 weeks when you're pregnant with twins. So I was huge. Um, and there was so much left to do because we still had the toddler and there's all the stuff that you think that you need. You don't actually need that much of it. But anyways, you think you do. And I so badly wanted to like get up and just nest or whatever. And I couldn't. Like I couldn't actually move without being in an immense amount of discomfort. And I realized the only person, like literally out of everyone in this entire house, the only person that can rest enough to keep these babies cooking a little longer is me. No matter how much money, no matter how much, like there is no physical way for anyone else to do this rest work except me. And this might sound so simple, but for me, it was like a revelation of wait a second, wait a second. So what does that mean? What are the things that only I can do? And there's a model that you'll see in there that it's me tasks, we tasks, and they tasks. And it's the basis of how I anytime I'm overwhelmed and anytime I'm looking at the list of like 50 things, I use that as a frame to say, okay, what are the only things that I can do? And what's really ironic is that if you do this right, you'll see that it's the me tasks are usually the things that we overlook the most. It's things like caring for your body, moving your body, eating. Like someone else can help prepare the food, but really only you can eat. And we almost like operate with this badge of honor. I think it's so interesting that you receive this download of like, this happened to slow him down because there is a price of not slowing down to make that point. So there's these me tasks that only we can do. Sometimes they feel like, that's like a luxury. So then we move to the we tasks, which are things that you can be involved in, but someone else largely executes. Like I'm really particular about food, so I might set the menu, but someone else can do the prep. And then there's the they tasks, which there's no real value add on who does it. Like if I put clothes in the dishwasher in the washing machine, or if my husband does, the clothes come out about the same because it's the washing machine that's doing the heavy lifting. I say that because we spend so much of our time, we get so bogged down in the they tasks. And what's really ironic is that there's not much value out there. Things that still have to get done, like not saying that, but when we spend our most precious resource, which is our time and energy, in the things that are going to come out the same whether we do them or whether we don't, we leave less room for the me tasks. And if you do that enough, you burn out, you get sick. There's a consequence. Like we think that there's no consequence. There is a consequence. And you usually find that consequence in at the worst possible time, the worst possible moment. So the most heartfelt advice that I could give is to have a really honest look at what you're carrying through this lens, like through this model of what am I uniquely here to do? What are the things that I am most alive when I do, that I want to do, right? And then what are the things that only I can do? and realize that by putting your energy there, you're not only giving more to the world, you're giving more to yourself. That brings longevity. And the very people that you care so much about, that you're wanting to do all these things for, they get to have you, God willing, for longer. And that is an ultimate gift.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. That's so good because we have a family notes that we all share. That we started a notes thing, and we were like, all right, everyone outline what you do throughout the week. And of course, mine was the shortest because I didn't acknowledge that I was doing. I'm a full time entrepreneur, right? And I'm busy throughout most of the day. I didn't put that in, and my husband had to fix it. Like, she's a full time entrepreneur. Like, he acknowledges it, not on a day to day, but when we're sitting down and like, right? So it's like the thing where you're like, all right, folks, because if you're hearing this podcast episode, my friend, you need to apply something of this to your life, okay? Not just because you're being a kind friend listening to my podcast or you're one of Karina's friends. It's a reason why you're listening to this, and you probably have two or three people you could send this episode to. The fallacy that you cannot ask for help or set up systems to give yourself more freedom, that needs to go. That needs to go, and everyone should be fortifying our foundations now, because the world's a very different place from before. I call the pandemic the panini. Before the panini, it's different. We're in a different, it's a whole different wide world now, you know. Karina and I are in a mastermind together where we're learning about how to utilize things like AI to make our lives easier. Part of that is the delegation, right? AI won't ever replace real people per se, but they will replace people who can use it, like versus someone who cannot use it. That's part of our world now, whether or not you want to acknowledge it or not. Unfortunately, you know, it's like people who were in the past who didn't believe in taking down segregation. It still happened. You may want to be in your pocket of your neighborhood where you think it doesn't exist. It actually does exist. It's gone, folks.
Mm.
Right? The women's rights, even though we lost some of the powers to the government, it's still acknowledged that women have equal rights. So in the same thing of this fallacy of how you need to do it all, that's it doesn't really exist anymore. Whether or not you've ever heard it, it doesn't. That's an old world before Panini rule.
I love this so much. And it's so true, right? Like I think the I think the real differentiator for people who adopt it versus people who don't, you don't, like you said, you don't have to adopt it. But that doesn't mean that you get to be absolved of the consequences of running yourself into the ground. And it's so harsh. It's hard to, like I said that, like my stomach clenched up because I know that it's not coming from a bad place. But maybe people would feel a little bit more compelled to take care of themselves. Sometimes we don't take care of ourselves for us, but we do for others, right? So maybe future cast and think, who do I want? What do I have in mind? Like, what experience do I want with my kids when they're 40? Sometimes a visual can really help this. What I mean by that is like when you put into perspective how much time you actually have with your kids. I saw this once and it was like staggering. But you realize that if you assume a normal lifespan, you actually spend way more time with your kids as adults, just in terms of like how many years, right? Like your kids more as adults than you do as kids. But that is assuming that you are going to be here. And not just here, but that you're going to be in like a strong enough condition to enjoy them, and a strong enough condition to be present for them. It can be really difficult to think about those things and to prioritize it when you're in pain in the present. But as the perspective of someone who would do anything to have my mom physically here, I know she's still guiding us in a lot of ways, but like I would have done anything. I would have done any amount of chores to have gotten the experience of seeing my mom hold my babies, be a grandmother, hear them calling her grandmother. Like I would, that is the stuff that like, that's the juicy part of life. And it 100% is our responsibility to make sure that we are doing what we can to set ourselves up for that experience, not just for us, but for our kids as well.
Oh, that's such a good point. when we put it in that perspective, right? In terms of you, my audience, and me, and Karina also, if we're future casting into quality, real quality connections with the people that are important in our lives, it makes decision making on how to delegate a little bit different, a lot different. And I'm going to also say, just because we're also worried about ourselves being around, having a child that could die in their sleep puts it into perspective. Would you rather your times now with them be quality, when you're at your best, when they're at their best? Because that is affected if you're trying to do everything all the time, right? It made it very clear to me. There's since they have the story about like the spoon theory, how when you're dealing with a long-term illness, I think it applies to anybody honestly now after the lockdown, the panini, a lot of us have limited energy, all of us, because we have this fatigue and also this grieving we haven't done together as a world yet on that level. None of us have really addressed it. So we're really tired. So all of us are waking up every morning with a limited number of spoons, all of us, even children. And every activity, even decision making, takes a spoon. And by the end of the day, we have no more spoons left. And so I always tell my family, you each get a tablespoon, and how you use that energy, it's up to you. Whether you want it like a good spoon or a waste of time because we're fighting about chores you didn't do. You can do that, or you want to chatter at me, that's fine. But then that spoon's gone. Because mom has like 20 spoons. They used to be ladles, and then they became teaspoons, and now they're like tablespoons. So you choose what you want to use your tablespoon of energy from me today is.
We're down to like the baking ones where it's like quarter. Oh, but it's so true. I I'm so glad you brought this up because one of the core concepts that I teach at the very beginning of the program is knowing what you're optimizing for. And I think a lot of times people think that I need more time, right? Like, no, if only I had a little bit more time. In reality, the harder thing to what we need more of is energy. And part of that energy is mental energy. The spoon, what's really interesting about spoon theory is that it parallels this other concept that we only get 200 good decisions a day. And that's why something like that should be sort of enjoyable, like shopping, is actually so exhausting because you're making micro decisions. Do I get this one? Do I get this one? Do I go into this store? Do I go into that? And even though that doesn't take a ton of time, you're you are burning through cash, through like mental cash, if you will, in that moment. And that's part of the reason why like structure and systems really is so life giving because it eliminates the number of decisions that you have to make. You're set up for a way that you're just following. Following is so different than deciding. And then you leave that bank of decisions for really meaty, meaningful decisions. And if you're in a place where your capacity is strained somehow, whether that's by illness, your own illness, a family member's illness, you really need to be able to lean on your best decision making capacity. And I think that's the time when that it's ironic because that very well may be the time that you think, I don't have time to build any sort of systems, any sort of structure. But in reality, you don't not like the amount of time that it takes is actually far less than we think it is. It doesn't have to be pretty. It can be super rustic and basic, but it works if it eliminates the mental load in you having to decide what to do every single morning.
I love that. I love that. Because coming from someone who has had to deal with multiple emergencies where it just destroys every semi structure you thought you had, systems like this is what keeps everything running so you can focus on the emergency at hand. There's a really funny meme going on social media about how like ADHD or someone who has complex PTSD, where like, you have a big emergency, I'm the one you come to. I am like a combination fighter, warrior, general, all you need in an emergency. Like, you need me because I will cut through what needs to be done. I drop an egg on the floor, the world is over. I mean, like, come on. And that's basically, right? It's like one of those things where, what do we do when the true emergencies happen? Because you can't make systems then, folks. You're literally in survival mode. If you're not in emergency or you feel it's too quiet, now's the time to build.
That is 100%, 100%. I talked often to moms who are thinking about becoming moms, but they hesitate a little bit because they're like, what is my life going to be? That is the perfect time. That said, the best, like good systems are living, breathing systems in that you do something, you try it, and then you modify, right? But it's so easy to modify compared to something that new. Uh, but that's why I that is why the the whole library of systems I've built is available because it really is, there's so much life-giving love that is on the other side of receiving structure. It's like a hug. It's something that carries you in a moment that you need it the most. And I really I really hope that as the years progress, as we move on from the panini, heal from it, acknowledge what happened, we walk away with more appreciation of, we deserve to feel held. We are so deserving of that structure. We don't have to just rely on grit and tenacity alone. Like, let's have it, let's lean into it, but let's amplify it so that we can meet that better version of ourselves instead of grinding through and then realizing, wow, we really missed out on a juicier version of our lives.
I love that. I love that. So, folks who are listening in, remember the gift from Corina is located at join.momswholeverage.com/delegate. Don't forget to also access my gift of danceandheal.com so that you can marry those two together. They'll help you get to a place where you are functioning at your optimal best. Karina, thank you so much for coming. We're going to have you come back. I think this episode might actually be cut in two. So we're going to look forward to having you coming back. Thank you for coming, folks. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the Dance to Heal podcast with Jenny C. Cohen. Come back next time to hear stories of inspiring triumph and learn more ways that you can heal yourself. To work with me and continue your journey, visit danceandheal.com. Are you ready to move?